My next guest is a broadcaster, entrepreneur, and an investor. A prolific journalist and frequently on TV and radio, home guru Alison Cork has over the past 20 years built up a global home interiors business operating across the UK and the US, encompassing publishing, online retail, design, licensing, and TV shopping. Alongside her own business, Alison at Home, Alison is an active investor and advisor to 3 other businesses, 2 of which are founded by women. And as if that wasn't enough, she also founded the not-for-profit organisations Make It Your Business and National Women's Enterprise Week to support and encourage women to start their own businesses. And if that wasn't enough to get you interested, Alison was also awarded an MBE in the 2023 King's New Honours list for services to female entrepreneurship. She's a hugely accomplished woman, and it gives me great honour to be able to introduce her to the stage this morning. But she's not here to tell you about any of that. At 57, just 3 years ago, seeing 60 on the horizon, Alison had a life-changing moment. Here to talk to you about her own transformation, this pivotal inflection point in her life, please join me in welcoming Alison Cork.
Ooh. Thank you very much, Sarah. That was wonderful. You bigged me up amazingly well. Before I start, can I get a selfie with all of you? Yeah. Thank you. Yes! Just want to put this. Okay, so I'll do it that way. So sorry, it's not getting everybody, but yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much. And if my mum rings, I do apologise. She rings me quite frequently, so it's just. Well, it's one of the side issues of somebody with dementia, which we'll touch on later. But anyway, so Sarah and I have known each other for a few years, and when Sarah asked me to talk today, she said, "You do realise that on paper you're rather annoying, don't you?" And I thought about this for a minute, and I said, "Well, okay." And she said, "Yeah, if I just read your accomplishments, they're just all going to hate you." And anybody who knows Sarah well knows that you can actually hear her saying that, can't you? She's just, but I love that. I love that. Honesty is a very undervalued quality. And actually, hopefully you're not going to hate me, because what I'm going to do is share with you, I am going to emphasise and talk about this sort of pivotal moment that's happened relatively recently and how it's changed my life. But I can't really do that effectively unless I tell you what led up to it and why I had a pivotal moment. And actually, a crucial part of that explanation is that the road to success is never straight. So whilst on paper, and we all know how to manipulate our CVs, it all looks absolutely lovely. What I'm going to do is do a quick trot through the first 55 years of my life, but give you the ugly bits as well as the good bits, because I think that will better explain why I had a pivotal moment. So I'm very happy to talk about failure. It's incredibly important to do so. So really, my journey as an entrepreneur started because of failure. I was at university. I wanted to impress my dad and tell him that I'd passed my driving test. Unfortunately, I have a genuine not condition, but I find it very hard to tell my right from my left. So when the driving examiner said, "Could you please turn right at the end of the road," I'd turn left. And he'd fail me on the spot. So I'd failed 5 times, and in so doing, I'd spent my entire student grant. And I knew that Dad didn't have the wherewithal to just put his hand in his pocket and cough up. So I thought, oh God, what am I going to do? I've got to do something quickly. And the only asset I had as a 19-year-old was to be able to talk. I knew I could talk. So I thought, right, I'm going to sell something to somebody, because that's how I'm going to make money and get out of this hole. And I started, rather euphemistically, a little booklet called Good Food in Cambridge, because in 1982 there was none, I can assure you. There was absolutely no good food in Cambridge. But I managed to persuade the restaurants to pay me money to advertise in my little booklet. And I'm going to go quite quickly through this because I know I've only got 15 minutes or so. At the end of my time as a student, I got a phone call from a London businessman. And he said, I've heard a bit about you. Would you come and work with me in my publishing company? And all my friends were being accountants and doctors and lawyers, and I knew instinctively that wasn't me. I wanted to be sort of more free than that. So I thought, you know what, no one's made me a better offer, I'll go. So I went from this first failure, which had become something which had worked and got me out of debt, into a publishing company. And then came the next big sort of fall, in that he literally gave me the keys to the office and said, right, okay, you're a smart young lady, build me a publishing company. And what I hadn't worked out was that, you know, he was a man of a certain age. He wanted an energetic young person to make money for him. And I kind of knew that, and I rationalised that that was probably okay because it's good to sit at the feet of a master, and who am I at, you know, 22, 23 to be calling the shots. So I thought, okay, fair enough. But I literally, and this was in the days, you want to take yourself back to late 80s, early 90s, when people bought books by mail order, and we started a mail order publishing business, and my job was to think up the titles of books that would sell. And I was spectacularly bad at this, and these books kept failing. And after several months, our accountant called us in and said, okay, Alison and John, how much longer are you going to let this go on? It's 1990, you're £100,000 down, that is quite a whack of money. And I remember saying, it was October, and I remember saying, give me till Christmas. I had no clue what I was going to do between October and Christmas, but it's like just buying myself some time. And a leaflet fell on my mat. I was never late for work, but this was the only leaflet that ever made me late for work. A leaflet fell on my mat a few days later, and it was about a book called The Government Auction Handbook. Now, I'm a certain vintage, as you know. Does anybody in this room remember the Government Auction Handbook? Probably not. No, okay. So it was a book about, then it was a thing, the auctions that existed where you could buy the goods of companies that had had their goods confiscated by HMRC because they hadn't paid their VAT or their tax or whatever. But the outcome of that was you could go to auctions, as little known as they were, and buy anything from a speedboat to a computer at about 10% of its real value. So I read this leaflet and I thought, bloody hell, that's good. I want the rights to that book. Contacted the guy. He said, oh, I think I've exhausted it. I've sold it to a few mailing lists. And I sort of went, oh, okay, jolly good. Can I buy the rights? And he said, yes, just pay me 10% of whatever you sell. And I said, deal. So I wrote the ad. My job was to do everything. So I wrote the ad, washed the dishes, put it in the Telegraph, and it was on a Saturday. And this was now about November the 11th. And well, obviously on a Saturday the post doesn't arrive, and on a Sunday the post doesn't arrive, and on Monday morning the post didn't arrive, and I thought, oh God, okay, all right, well listen, it was worth a shot, and I'll just, go and do something else in life. And then the phone rang, and it was the post office, and they said, Alison, we're going to have to send vans. we can't carry this post. And they sent 3 vans, and we banked £85,000 on the first day. It was an absolute barnstormer. We sold about 203,000 copies in 12 weeks. It cost me pence to print. We were selling it at £12.95. We made a fortune. Well, he made a fortune. I made 5% of a fortune. And so we went literally from staring defeat in the face to, we're going to take this company public. So in 1992, that was 1992, in 1992, we took the company public, and it suddenly catapulted me to be the youngest ever female founder of a publicly quoted company, which was astonishing because it had come from complete, staring nothing in the face. So anyway, then the next rude awakening came along, which was that we went public. We had our first board meeting, and of course I was the only woman at the table, and I was completely ignored. Not one man spoke to me the entire board meeting, and I thought, hang on a minute, I found the book that made this company go public, that allowed you to sit round this table as a board member. How dare you? But having said that, I also knew that there were, 10 of them and 1 of me, and I just looked round the table and thought, I know one thing, this isn't going to be any fun whatsoever. So I did what a lot of women do, rightly or wrongly, which is faced with this sort of, these problems, we just go off and do our own thing. So I thought, you know what, I've got some shares, I'm going to cash them in, and I'm leaving. So I did that, I cashed in my shares, I bought a property, as a security. And I thought, what am I going to do next? And I had nothing. Obviously, I had the money from the shares, but I had nothing else to my name. So I suddenly thought, what is it you actually love? What feeds your soul? And I thought, well, it's homemaking. My mum and my grandma would be very pleased to hear this. I think my dad might be a bit disappointed, having been so well educated, but it's homemaking. But I need to make it a business. So I was scratching around. I looked across the pond and I saw Martha Stewart in America, and I thought, that's it. We don't have a British Martha Stewart. I'm going to be Martha Stewart in England. So then I faced a problem, because these things never happen easily, which is, but you have no authority to be the British Martha Stewart. Right, you can knock out a sponge cake, but I mean, that's not exactly a $750 million empire. Let's just be honest about this. So I analysed it, and this is a key learning I would always say to people, you know, plan your work and work your plan. So I analysed, so I worked out that Martha had started by writing a book. That's where her journey had started. So I thought, right, what can I write a book about? What do I know? Well, hang on a minute, you just took a company public. You can write a book about that. So I wrote a book called Profit Through the Post, which dear Judy Piatkas believed in, and Piatkas Publishing, and published. At that point, of course, because it's in print, it must be true, I became an author. So then I thought, right, now I need to leap to a subject matter that's closer to Martha than mail order is. So I thought, well, what else can I do? Okay, well, I have renovated properties and I do love homemaking. So I'm going to write a book called The Streetwise Guide to Renovating Your Home. And dear Judy came up trumps and published it again, which gave me permission to leap to the next stone. At that point, of course, I was a home expert because I'd written a book on property renovation. Hurrah! So then I thought, right, now I've got to get into television because Martha has a television series. And this was the next tragedy, which was I wrote about 400 letters. I mean, literally, I contacted every broadcasting company in this country. And because I was a truly awful presenter, didn't get any jobs. And my favourite rejection letter was from an executive at Meridian TV who said, and I quote, "Dear Alison," he wrote to me, "thank you so much for your showreel, which I watched with great interest. As you know, there's a long line of people wanting to be television presenters, and having watched your showreel, I can see absolutely no reason why you should go to the front of that line." That is actually exactly what he said. And I allowed myself to cry for about 5 minutes on the kitchen floor because I had written about 400 letters. I was exhausted. And I knew that I had something to give. I believed I had something to give the world. I thought, no. And then I just sort of sat upright on the floor and just thought, how dare you? Just like those guys around the boardroom table. How dare you tell me what I can or can't do? Because I know I can. I just need the chance. So I kept going. And a few months later, the daytime commissioner at ITV said, "I'm not sure about this idea, Alison, but I'm going to give you 35 minutes. So I put on my orange power blazer, the only one I had, and strutted in to her office and pitched like my life depended on it, and walked out with a television series, which was a remarkable vote of confidence by her because, think about it, I'd never presented a television programme, I'd never written a television programme, and she commissioned me to write and present a 6-part series which was called Home in the Country. And at that point, Martha had arrived. It's like, I now have a television series, I have books, it's going to happen. So, but it was really, really hard to get there, and that's the bit that I want to emphasise. So, I'm now going to fast forward a bit. So having got a television series, I then went on to write lots of columns about interiors, started a website and a product range, did some licensing deals, designed furniture for people. So I'm going through several years now. In parallel, I was having children and building my home, of course, and went through all of that. And then went into TV shopping, which is the most recent thing I've done, but still 14 years ago. And then something terrible happened. I was building my company and it was growing really fast, and my wonderful accountant had left and I got a new accountant in. And after about a week, this woman came to me and said, "There's something wrong with your numbers." And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, we're doing really well. We're growing every month. And she said, yeah, that's indisputable, but the cash isn't there. And she was forensic. And we worked out fairly quickly that two people, or we believed that two people in the company were defrauding the company. And I remember going down to we were on Regent Street, and I remember going down to Charing Cross Police Station and saying, look, this is what I've got. I'm pretty sure that these two have stolen a 6-figure sum from me, and I need you to do something about it because 22 people's jobs depend on this. And I remember the dear people at Charing Cross Police Station saying, the problem is this is the West End, and a 6-figure sum is a lot of money, but it's not millions. It's hundreds of thousands, not millions, and we only have X amount of resource. So I'm afraid we can't help you. So I interpreted what he said, and I said, what you're really saying is you need a slam dunk conviction. And if I can bring you the evidence, you will take up this case, won't you? And they said, that's kind of where we're at. So I said, fine. So I went away, and I employed a digital forensic detective to go through the code that the website had been written in, to pinpoint and he went through thousands of lines of code, and I'm not a coder, so I don't understand this, but he pinpointed the exact moment where the two people responsible, one of whom was head of digital, and by the way, if anybody runs a company, statistically, it is almost always the head of digital who performs the fraud. Sorry if you are the head of digital in a company, I do apologise. Pinpointed the exact moment, and I took that information back down to Charing Cross Police Station and said, right, there you go, I'm not moving from this entrance hall until you take on this case. And the security door, the people behind the glass barriers looked a bit nervous because they could sit, and I refused to sit down. They said, would you take a seat? I said, no, I won't take a seat. I'm standing until somebody comes to talk to me. And after about 15 minutes, the security door opened and an arm came out and did this. And it was a female arm, and it was the wonderful Detective Julie Jode who took me upstairs and said, okay, Alison, you need to know 2 things about me. One, I love my job. I said, that's really good, Judy. I'm really pleased to hear that, Julie rather. And secondly, I have pretty much 100% conviction rate. So I said, great, we're going to do this. And she said, yes, we are. And it took over 3 years. It was immensely painful financially and in every other way. People lost their jobs as a result of it, but we kept the business going, and I won't say the pleasure, because it wasn't a pleasure, but I had the satisfaction of seeing 2 people in Southwark Crown Court plead guilty and get 4 and 2 years in prison respectively. And it was important, and you know, if ever I go on to do more public service, which I'm very interested in, I will focus on fraud, because people say most fraud doesn't get reported because people are embarrassed, and it's humiliating. You feel stupid that you didn't see it. But people also think it's a victimless crime because nobody got shot or stabbed. That's not true. It's a horrible crime, and there are many victims, and so it's something I feel very, very strongly about. But again, that's an illustration of how this lovely introduction about about my business, and you know, all of that you said is true, but as I said, the path to success is pretty wonky, and that was part of my wonky path. So anyway, bowling up. How many more minutes do I have?
As much as you want.
Okay, so got through that, and that was about that was 2016. I put that behind me, so about 7 years ago. So carried on with the business, and in 2017-18, maybe kind of as a reaction to that, because I started to put things into sort of bigger perspective in my life, I thought, why is it so hard for women to start their own business? Why is there so little investment for women? Why do women lack confidence? This is, you know, we all lack confidence. I do too, even though I may not appear to, I do at times. We all do. And so I started Make It Your Business, which is a national networking organisation, pro bono, to help women start their own business. And then off the back of that, last year, founded National Women's Enterprise Week, which is to celebrate enterprise. But in that period, and after all these things, and you know, we're talking now sort of 35 years in business, and bringing up 2 children, and all this sort of the stress that you place upon yourself, wanting to educate them privately if you can, because you feel that's the best thing. All of those stresses had obviously all had their impact. And certainly that the fraud, I mean, you know, I'll be quite open with you, I'm quite an optimistic person, and it's very, entrepreneurs tend to have their glass half full. It was the only time in my life where I seriously sat on the sofa and thought, I'm not sure I want to be here anymore. Yeah. Maybe I'd just put my head in the oven and be done with it. Sorry, I knew I was going to get upset at this point, but it's important to say it because we all have challenges, and it's important to ask not how you got here, but where you go from here. And I did get out of it because I just thought that's an incredibly selfish thought. You have two sons who would be devastated not to have their mother here. Well, I'd like to think they'd be devastated. Maybe I'm picking myself up here a bit. And so, you know, you need to push on. So I did, and I put them in jail, and that was when I was able to, you know, put it all in perspective. But anyway, got to this point at 57, about 3 years ago, where I looked in the mirror and I saw these sort of cake folds of fat rolling over my Bridget Jones style knickers, and a sort of a look of self-loathing on my face to match. And I just thought, have I reached that place where I'm going to live a life of quiet desperation, where actually in my heart of hearts I think it's all over, and I'm never going to dance in a backless dress or dare to wear a bikini on the beach, or just go out with my mates and dance because I can and I don't care. Or go to Las Vegas, which I did 2 weeks ago, so much fun. and go to a pool party. And so I looked in the mirror and I wasn't very happy at all with what I saw. And I think that's true of a lot of women. Obviously, menopause, I had 10 years of menopause, absolute hell, awful. In the middle of all of this, there was menopause, of course, because that's what nature does to you. And I remember my husband saying to me, you know, I love you as you are. I like Rubenesque women. But I was about 5 stone heavier than I am now, so I was Rubenesque. But if you are feeling really bad about it, there is a place called Ultimate Performance, which is a gym, but they'll teach you nutrition. And I had actually, I haven't shared this with you, but at one point I was a food critic many years ago. And I love food. I mean, I would just eat everything and anything indiscriminately, never question what I was eating because it was such a joy. Why would you? And of course, that came back to haunt me. So I went down to this place, and the first thing they ever said to me, so I walked in, and it was full of these big, all men, muscle-building guys, and I thought, oh, God, I'm just going to die here. This is going to be terrible. And they smiled, and one of them came over to me and said, what you need to understand, Alison, is that we completely respect you for walking through the door, because that was the hardest thing, and you've just done it. I thought, okay, maybe I can do this. And then they said, and the second thing you need to know is that we can train you till you drop to the floor. But if you do not change the way you eat, because you've just told us what you eat, and it, just for your information, is about 95% carbohydrate, and most of it beige, you will not lose weight. That's the fact. So I then went on this 9-month journey, which is really what Sarah wants me to talk about, and I'll do very quickly, which was absolutely pivotal and life-changing, because to put it bluntly and succinctly, had you asked me before, what are your top 10 priorities in life? Health and fitness wouldn't even have been number 10. Probably wouldn't even have been number 15. I never thought about it. I walked. I thought I was healthy. Fine. And what they taught me was the absolute importance of putting health and well-being, I won't even say fitness because that can have difficult connotations, but health and well-being at the top of your list, because it's like throwing a pebble in a pond and everything else will ripple out from it. So I went from absolutely not being conscious of what I was eating or caring or drinking and never exercising, to weight training, which I could talk for an hour on weight training. The importance of weight training for women, especially at our age, it's the thing you want to do. If, you know, forget cardio. I mean, if you love cardio, do it. I don't do any cardio. I weight train 3 hours a week. That's it. Bone density. You want your bones to be strong. You want to have good posture. You want to have that stamina that weight training will give you. And then of course eating well, and that basically very, very quickly means a high protein diet. You do need to eat carbohydrates, but just for the avoidance of doubt, your body, if you're eating protein and fat and don't eat carbohydrates, would actually use its excess of the protein and the fat to create carbohydrates. So your clever body will actually produce carbohydrates even if you didn't eat them. But you should eat carbohydrates, but they should be the green broccoli type as opposed to the, I don't want to damn any food stuff, but we'll call it beige food. So fresh produce is absolutely your friend, beige food is your enemy, and sugar is the devil. Sugar is the source of so many things. Diabetes, cancer, 1 in 2 of us is going to get cancer, dementia. There's a link between sugar and dementia. 1 in 10 of us has dementia. My mother's just been diagnosed with dementia, and interestingly, although she's very slender, has always had loads of sugar in her diet. 3 spoons of sugar in a coffee, which I've always sort of been a bit surprised by. But anyway, so this whole thing of health and fitness has completely changed not just my attitude to life, but my energy for and my ability to live life. And I lost about 5 stone and just feel a completely different person. So I trekked to Everest Base Camp when I lost the weight. It was my sort of goal. It was like, when I'm fit enough, I'm going to do this because, to misquote Edmund Hillary, who was asked why he climbed to the top of Everest, he said, because it's there. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it because it's there, because I can do it now, and I'm not going to be exhausted. And now I would say it's become number 1 on my list. It doesn't mean I'm not interested in business. I invest in other businesses, but I have so much more energy and ability to do that. And I'm now coming up for 61. I could and would love to live in health to triple digits. So I've got 40 years left. I want those to be good years, and they can be good years. And your strength and your bone density, we all know about osteoporosis, it's just incredibly important. Very quickly, I went to a meeting recently, and it was quite an important meeting, and unfortunately I was walking by a lake on a boardwalk and I slipped just before I was going into the door of the building. And I crashed to the floor on this side, sort of literally. It was a bit sort of Disney. I lifted into the air and then sort of crashed down, the whole of me, and it was very hard landing. And it was so loud and so sort of dramatic that about 6 people ran over, thinking I would at least be concussed, if not sort of broken arms and what have you. And I remember lying there thinking, okay, which bit hurts the most? Because something's broken. Which bit hurts the most? And after about 4 seconds, I realised that nothing hurt. Nothing hurt at all. And I took the hand of a rather nice-looking young man and allowed him to help me to my feet. And joking aside, realised that I was completely fine. And I'm sure, had I not been weight training, I would not have been completely fine. And recently, out of curiosity, I had a bone density scan, and the woman said to me, the form says you're 60. I said, yep, I'm 60. And she said, well, you have the bone density of a 35-year-old. And I thought, that is what it's about. It's about strength, and strength physically gives you strength mentally. So I would say, it's never, ever, ever too late. You might think at 57, yeah, I'll just descend into my Bridget Jones pants and be done with it. It's never too late. And it's amazing. I am just in awe at how clever our bodies are and how they respond. Because unless you are, one of the 0.01% who has a condition, hormonal or thyroid, that inhibits weight loss or actively forces weight onto you, I am confident in saying that if you follow the principles of accountability with regard to movement, just call it movement or even exercise, and most importantly nutrition, you can turn it around, and turning that bit of you around turns everything else around. And so I'm really excited about the next 40 years, and I'm going to climb many more mountains. That's it.
Absolutely amazing. What I would like to just say in my defence, if we go back to the conversation about you're really annoying on paper, and there was this sort of slightly awkward silence at that point on the phone where I thought I'd really blown it and I'd lost my keynote for today. And
I think I was laughing.
And you were laughing. I think I did then say that follow up with when someone meets you and talks to you in person, how absolutely lovely and gorgeous you are. So that's in my defence. And I would say, without digging a hole even deeper, is roll over Martha Stewart. Who wants to be Martha Stewart? Everyone wants to be Alison Cork.
I don't know. Well, she was a good role model and very determined woman, and you can't take that away from her.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And there are very few role models. For
But
women,
what a story!
Yeah.
I mean, what an absolute story! I mean, what a fantastic person to have here. And so I guess, Alison, look, I've got some intellectual questions a bit later on, but I want to start with this one, and I think this is the one that probably everyone really, really wants to know. Is you're a successful entrepreneur, you're an investor, in every breath there's sort of, oh, did I tell you I was a food critic? Did I tell you I was, I did this? You're on telly, you're on Instagram, every time I open my Instagram account, there you are, walking, 6 o'clock in the morning, sort of sharing something, and you're a mum to 2 boys. And you look absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
So how on earth, we've talked a bit about the juggling act earlier on, this is sandwich generation, and we've talked about different discussions. How do you do it?
Well, I alluded to it earlier. I think that you have to be quite strategic. You have to have a plan and work the plan. There is very little, if I'm honest, left to chance in my life. I know what my days throw up things you don't expect, but I have a plan for each day. And my days are quite long, but that's been helped by the fact that I now have much better stamina, which is another reason to be on the health and fitness thing. So I get up quite early. I'm probably I start in the park at about 6 o'clock. I probably go to bed at about 11 p.m. I know I don't get quite enough sleep. That's bad of me, and I should be better. But it is about structure, and if you don't plan, you can only expect, pardon my language, piss poor performance. I mean, that is the natural outcome. So you've got to have that plan. And it's the same with the food thing. What they drummed into me, and I've now absorbed, is accountability. You've got to be accountable for everything that you eat, every action that you take. Because for every action, there's a reaction. And
accountable to yourself.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? You work for yourself in every part of your life. And I guess sort of following on from that, is the whole sort of work-life balance thing, is it a myth? Is it something that we think we can have, but actually we are doomed for failure?
I think it depends what time of life you're asking that question of somebody, because most entrepreneurs are not very balanced anyway. I mean, we are quite sort of driven, extreme people, because that's how we overcome all the difficulties and the failures. So I'm probably not a very good person to answer that question, but I would say that early in life, when there are so many demands, if you've got a family, you've got children, you're trying to build a career, you've got a husband, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you've got a home you're trying to build, there's a lot going on. So there's very little room for balance. You've just got to throw it all at what needs to be done. I think as you go later into life, then there is the potential for more balance. And I'd like to think that, well, in a way, that's what I've done now. I've said, you know what? I'm not abandoning my health anymore. It's going up to number 1 on the list. And everything else can just, stand in line.
Absolutely. And I guess one of the things I thought was really struck by when you were talking was, sort of going back to those sort of scenarios in your life where, there you were in the boardroom, 1 in 10. We all know all the sort of stats about women in boardrooms and all the work that's been done by Helena Morrissey and to change that. But this sort of concept, which I think will really resonate with so many people in the room, around invisibility.
Yeah.
And how and I remember reading an interview of you where how we all get so irritated when we're younger, when we get wolf whistled. And then as we get older, we quite like it when someone wolf whistles at us, don't we? And so kind of talk a little bit more about the sort of, I guess as women, how we become invisible. Because you can see that, you see it on telly and films, actresses and everything. It's actually how we, we want to be empowered, we want to be recognised. But how do we stay visible in a way that is true to ourselves?
Yeah.
And we want to be seen.
And it's about a gradual process of attrition, all these things that happen through your life, that snub at work, or the business that you couldn't raise money for because the panel of VCs were all men and they didn't understand an app that helps you buy the right size bra, which is actually a real example from a girlfriend of mine. And all of this stuff, and then trying to get back into the workplace when your children have grown up a little bit, and finding that you're not valued in the same way that you think you should be valued, because actually you are, you've got so much wisdom at that point, and so there's so much layering to you, but you should be highly valued. And I think it's very difficult, and I think that the way that I have tackled it is to go back to basics and say, well, I can't expect the world to value me or sort of love me in inverted commas if I don't like myself. And I'd got to that place where I didn't like myself very much for all the reasons I've explained, that life had just thrown a few challenges, and it has an impact. So I would say that the answer is to always start with the core proposition, which is yourself, and feel good about yourself, and that will breed confidence. And of course, we all know when somebody walks into the room and they're confident, you feel it, you sense it, you see it. It's the way they hold themselves, the way they speak, and I think it has to start internally.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. And I don't think we'd have a really healthy club conference if we didn't talk about imposter syndrome. It comes up over and over and over again, doesn't it? And and we're all. I mean, again, it was so interesting hearing you allude to that. That for anyone sitting there looking at this bold, confident, amazing-looking person, that you could suffer from confidence issues, and we all do.
Everybody does.
We all do. In different sort of shapes and guises. It's how we process them. It's how we approach it and how we deal with it.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, it is. And it doesn't matter what stage of life you're at. When you're suited and booted and facing your audience, you're all smiles and you're putting on the whatever needs to be done. But we all start at 6 a.m, makeupless, looking in the mirror, thinking, "Really, really?" so yeah, it's true of everybody.
Yeah,
there are no
brilliant.
exceptions.
Now you've talked a little bit about
apart from Kim Kardashian. I think she has 100% self-belief. It's incredible.
Well, but she probably doesn't take the makeup off to start with.
Yeah. That's very true.
So it's probably a slightly different starting point. Yeah. So you've talked a little bit about your boys.
Yes.
And I guess here you are. You sort of talked a bit about. First half of your life is about that kind of accumulation. It's career. It's about the building, and then the second half is about. About focusing in on the bits that really matter, which to a degree is actually in some way shedding some of that. If you're looking back in that rearview mirror and you're talking to your boys, whether it's around career or it's around, just sort of life's lessons, what are you saying to your boys?
The thing, I have to answer that question in two parts, because for their earlier life, partly because I was a full-on career mum trying to structure things so that they were always busy, I think that I probably put too much into their lives. And actually, in publishing terms, the white space on the page is as important as the printed word, if not more. It gives it context and depth, and everybody needs room to breathe. So I think earlier in their life, my advice was be busy, Mandarin, violins, clarinets, all that stuff, karate.
Sound familiar?
Yes, I'm sure it does. And actually, what I've realised in more recent years is that the most important thing is to allow your children to breathe and to play and to find their natural interest. Literally watch them from a distance, don't interfere, and just see where their minds go. What are they doing? Are they creative? Are they numerical? What is it? And so now my advice to my sons aged 23 and 20 is you need to have a passion. You need to find your passion. And you mustn't be ashamed or afraid to say, I know that Dad probably wants me to be in finance, private equity guru, but actually I want to run a farm, or whatever the conversation is. And I think it's quite a scary one for parents as well as children. Parents, because we have this preordained idea of, especially in urban, very competitive urban places like London, of how we want our child's life to look. And children don't want to let their parents down.
We'll go back to the driving test, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Really healthy advice, isn't it? I think for each and every one of us is that, again, it's you're just so caught up in that melee again of life, of having aspirations for your children, helping them sort of achieve that and direct them, but actually you need to pause and allow them to breathe, allow them to be themselves, and that they're not you.
100%. And I've always, I mean, I'm sort of slightly dipping into fact here, because one of my sons, I think I've always underestimated how much he loves nature. And that could have been a career path. It isn't at the moment, but perhaps it could have been, or it might be. So I sort of tested the water recently, and I said, you know, I'm actually divesting myself of most of my assets at the moment because I want experiences, not things in life. I've got to that point where I realise that things aren't really very important. But what I would like to do is take some of the money from selling the house in London and buy a group of buildings on a bit of land in the countryside. And what I'm going to do is live in one of them and give you guys the keys to the other buildings. You don't have to do anything with those keys. There's no obligation to turn up on a Friday night or, you know, for Sunday roast, but they're yours to do what you wish with, which could be renovate, could be grow a small holding, whatever. And the son, whom I think is interested in nature, just leapt at it and said, oh, I'd absolutely love that. And so I suspect that, you know, and maybe that will lead to something else, you know. And I said to him, it doesn't mean that nature has to be your career, but it clearly needs to be somewhere there because you clearly love it. So it could be your weekend, you know, sort of mental health retreat or whatever.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So we've got time for a few questions for Alison. Does anyone have anything they would like to ask Alison, or do I get to carry on? Go on. I know we've got Anna. I know you're. Oh.
Hi.
I know you talked about nutrition.
Yes.
Hang on. Do we need this on a mic to capture this? Okay. Here, there you go. Go on, Amanda.
I know you talked about nutrition, and I wondered whether you went to this centre and somebody did you a programme, because I've just recently been reading 2 really amazing books. One is Ultra Processed Food.
Chris Van Tulleken.
It's
great, isn't it? It is the book on the subject.
And the other one is by a guy called Dr. Andrew Jenkinson, which is How to Eat Food and Still Lose Weight.
Yep.
And they're the same thing.
Yep.
It's not about the calories in the food, but the food in the calories.
Yeah.
And I just think everybody should read it, and they should show their children, and they should talk about it. And it's exactly as you say, it's all about sugar.
Yeah.
But it's talking about what is metabolism, what does it do? It's just brilliant. And it talks about different types of oils. It's just butter and olive oil. Yeah. But it's really practical. It's really easy. Yeah. And I just think these are the kind of books and things, just like you're talking about, that we need to talk about 100%. To everybody.
So the place, to answer your question, the place I went to, they put forward, they obviously weigh you, measure you, look at your physiognomy, your physique and your physiognomy, all of you. And then they put together a programme based on how many calories a day you should be eating, depending upon how much weight you need to lose and the speed at which you want to lose it. And they pair that with a weight training programme, and it is just weights. And they are spectacularly good at what they do, because they literally hold you accountable. Every week, you know, you're measured, you're weighed, you know that you're going to walk in there and be held accountable. And you do need to be held quite close, because it's quite a scary journey, and there's a lot of lack of confidence in that journey, because we're all used to yo-yo dieting and never actually losing the weight and never keeping it off. And at 57, I thought, this is my last chance saloon. I've got to get this right. So that's why I went to them. But what I would say, when you're talking about books, they publish a book, The Ultimate Performance book of, I can't remember the exact title, but it's Ultimate Performance, and it's their training and weight loss program. If you do exactly what it says in this book, you will lose weight. You will lose weight. And I say that because Ultimate Performance is not cheap. It was an investment that I decided to make because I knew I felt I had one chance, and it paid off. But it is expensive. And therefore, the book, I think, is incredibly important. And you could pair that with a training buddy or a PT at your local gym and say, I want to follow this program, so you've got some support. But the book is so good, and their cookbook is also good. It's a bit inaccurate. I'm actually writing a book on health and fitness now with lots of recipes in it, and I'm very excited because I think people would be really pleasantly surprised if they saw how much I eat every day. I eat a lot, and I love food, but it's what you eat that matters. Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, and Chris Van Taliken, what a great book. Incredible. Great question. Thanks, Amanda. And who wants to come back and hear Alison talk about her book when she's it's going to be ready in the autumn, isn't it? Yes. There you go. Right, we'll have you back in the autumn. Anyone else got any other questions? We will. Go on, Anthony. Hello.
When did you pass your driving test?
Actually, have you?
Okay, so I passed it 6th time. And the examiner said at the end, not knowing that it was my 6th attempt, yeah, I really am most impressed with your driving, Miss Cork. You really seem to know these roads. It's like, yes, I do. It was so funny. And so that was a long, long time ago. I was 21 and I'm 40 years ago. So, but you'll be pleased to know, given that I can't tell my left from my right, that I no longer drive. And it was one of the things I did when I turned my health and fitness around. I gave away my car. It's like, I'm going to walk or take a bus or something. And I
put L&R on your hands.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm not a danger at a roundabout anymore. So it's all good. It's all good.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, I'm going to reserve the right to the last question. I mean, obviously, you talked a little bit about public service.
Yeah.
You met fascinating people, all those sort of board members who now, I guess, really sort of eat their words and stuff. You make a decent cake, you said.
Yeah.
And now love food. You're going to have a dinner party. And you can have four people to that dinner party. Who are you going to invite, Alison?
Right. I'm going to, so that there are various pillars of passion in my life. I'm going to invite, well, funnily enough, Chris Van Taliken would be one of the four, definitely, because he is, we could just talk forever about food and how important it is. So Chris Van Taliken would be there. Rowan Williams, who was once the Archbishop of Canterbury. Mm-hmm. He was the Archbishop of Canterbury, but actually he's a poet and a philosopher, really, and I was lucky enough to be taught by him at university for one of my papers. And he was such an incredible man with such a deep and spiritual and nuanced view on life that just to ask him, that sort of big question, life after death, come on, Rowan, give it to us. You were the Archbishop of Canterbury, what's it all about? Because for me, it's I'm not particularly religious, and for me it's about now, which is why the whole thing about health and fitness and squeezing every drop out of life is so important. So he'd be on my list. I'm very interested in artificial intelligence, and I've recently got involved with an artist, one of the businesses I'm trying to help, who uses artificial intelligence to create art, and so I'd have him there because he's young and he's part of the future and where we're all going. And I adore fashion, so I suppose I'd have to have someone like Miuccia Prada.
Amazing.
Kick-ass businesswoman.
Absolutely.
Just happens to be the head of an $8 billion business. I know her dad founded it, but she's not done a bad job. And she would just be amazing, and she'd have to lend me some clothes.
What a dinner party. and can I just say, if you're looking for someone to do the washing up and serving, I am available. Please join me in thanking Alison Cork, who I think you'd say definitely squeezes every drop out of life. Well done, you.